Hey folks, Joe in Local Survival. Welcome back to the series we're doing here. If you're new here, first time you see my beautiful bearded face, go back to the first video, guys. In the series, it will tell you in a lot better context and detail exactly what we're doing here. However, to be fair, an overarching view of what we're doing here, at least a 30,000 foot view, is looking at the common categories people put inside their bug out bag, or they should be putting inside their bug out bag / get home bag. Because again, these scenarios I talk about, guys, this is good for, oh no, I got lost in the woods for XYZ days and a reason, to, oh no, it's just the fan society's falling apart. I gotta either bug out or bug home, whatever it's gonna be. So, that being said, tweak this to your own personal need, because again, it's as individual as an individual self. So, moving on, guys. We already did the cover system, the combustion, the containers. Now we're in the 4C, the 5C survivability, and that is cutting tools. Again, this is coined by Dave Canterbury, not myself. I don't claim credit for it. So, that being said, guys, when we look at cutting tools, we're going to pay attention to this, our environment. This is what's going to dictate where your cutting tools are going to be, at least at large. Now, again, if you live in the tropical regions where you literally have to duck, dip, dive, duck, and dodge your way through the environment so you can actually walk through it, you're probably going to want something like a machete, a lightweight blade, so you can cut that vegetation out of your way and you get through the jungle and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. Something that's a little more versatile than just a machete, I'd recommend, say, a larger knife like a kukri or a Bowie knife, something like that, guys, or even a stubby machete, something like that. Now, if you live in the heavier timberland of the North America, like I do, and it is this thing called winter, 6 months of the year, where you just stare at your window and hate life. But the thing is this, though, you need firewood. That's going to affect your survivability because you're outside, because you're dumb like me and you enjoy winter, but you want to stay warm and be outside as long as you can, or even camp out night. You're going to want to have a fire both day and night. So that means that's a lot of firewood to process. You're going to need a fire chopping device, i.e. an axe or a hatchet, to cut down that firewood for you. So, that being said, guys, I was going to talk about saws as well. I don't have my folding saw here. It's actually in my backpack because I just got back from hiking. But other than that, you have saws with you. But the most basic unit of the cutting tools category, guys, is a good, solid, sturdy belt knife, okay? I don't care what brand you carry. I don't care how much you bought it for. It can be $300. Better not be some chintzy $10 knife. I'm telling you that right now. This, you gotta think, okay, this tool could literally save my life. This is my last line of defense, cutting tool wise, at least in my mind, right? So get a really good cutting tool. Get a really good belt knife, guys. Don't cheat. Don't cheap yourself out. I would personally recommend my first belt knife, which was a Buck General 119, if I remember the model is. I think is that. It used to be $50. I think it's around like 60 or 70 now nowadays. Whatever. The knife I've been rocking for a bit now, guys, is the Jeff White Bush One knife, convex grind. I think it's like a 5.5 inch blade, something like that. Convex grind. I really like it. So, diving into this whole thing, guys, let's talk about a belt knife. Again, should be fixed blade. I don't care if folding knives are like, oh, it's the strongest on the planet. Probably not compared to a fixed blade. So get a fixed blade knife, okay? You're going to want a high carbon steel blade. I know a lot of people have controversy about that. Yeah, if you live on the ocean or near the ocean and that's how you make your living, sure, high carbon steel might not be your forte. Again, the Buck General 119, though, is stainless steel, but it's high carbon steel, or high carbon stainless steel, excuse me. That way it doesn't rust. It's actually rust resistant, just like stainless steel is, but it has a high carbon element where you can use it on a ferrocene rod effectively. I've never tried, honestly, the rock method where you bang it on the back of your knife or the spine of your knife and throw sparks from that. I haven't tried that with a knife. I have tried it with this Jeff White knife, and it works quite well. Now, granted, high carbon steel, that's why you want high carbon steel for all your tools as much as possible. I understand, again, the rust issue. People are kind of scared of that, a little skittish. I'm telling you right now, guys, even though I live in Michigan, which is the north of America, right? We still get very humid summers, especially downstate where I used to live in between two lakes. Really freaking humid. It sucked. I don't like humidity, but here I find myself. So, that being said, just maintain your tools, which you should be doing anyways. Paying attention to them. Is there rust on them? Get rid of the rust, oil it up. You should be good to go. Now, that's high carbon steel part of that. So fixed blade, high carbon steel. You want a sharp 90-degree spine on this, guys. Why? That way you can go up to, say, a cedar tree, take the back of your knife, and have some kind of catch down below, whether it's your shirt pinned up against the tree or your hat, and the bill's like this against the tree, so it hopefully falls right there on the bill, and you catch it, as long as you're not sweating profusely and it's not wet. when you scrape that bark and get that off there. Or you can pick up a stick off the ground. It's like this piece of maple. Did rain out earlier. That's why there's some mosquitoes out trying to eat my face off right now. But say this bark was completely saturated and it was still raining or whatever. You can take this knife spine, because it's nice, sharp 90 degrees. You can strip the outer bark down to the inner wood where it's nice and dry. And again, you can always check the dryness of the wood by taking it, touching it to your cheek. If it feels dry, you're good to go. So that's why you want a sharp 90-degree spine. And like I said before, you can always use this as an extra striker on a ferrocene rod or magnesium bar. That way you can get little bits off either one of those and then strike them on the ferrocene rod part and throw the star with sparks. So there's that. Now blade length, again, that's a little touchy because a lot of people are like, well, I like my 8-inch or my 12-inch whatever knife, and that's cool. I don't care. Me personally, I like to see a 4-inch to 6-inch blade length, guys. Why? Because that's historically what we're finding most frontiersmen and women carried back in the day as their duty knife, as I like to call it. So basically, if they're out there butchering an animal, they're using that knife. If they're out there processing firewood, they're using that knife. If they're out there cutting cordage, doing this, doing that, that's their go-to belt knife. It's just a little tool they carry with them so they can effect all these different chores. That's how you got to really think about this. Now, grind on your knife. Again, that's more of a personal matter. It's like a Chevy versus Ford, chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream. Go vanilla. Um, it's kind of that basis. Now, you got to understand the pros and cons of these grinds as well. So, for example, the, I guess, thinnest, therefore the most brittle, or possibly the most brittle grind is going to be your hollow grind. Now, it's going to be skinny. It's used for skinning a lot of times, gutting fish, um, really fine carvings, per se. That's what you use a hollow grind for. However, would I recommend somebody take that kind of grind it on a knife and then baton the crap out of, like, say, heavy wet oak wood? No, I would not. It'd probably break the knife itself or the blade. It would start chipping. Now, add the frozen factor in there. That's where things really got interesting. So that's kind of what you got to think about when you start buying knives. Like, okay, where could I possibly wind up with this knife? If you're never really a traveler like myself, I mean, I travel over Michigan, but I don't really leave Michigan or the North for that fact. So I understand the environment I find myself in. Now, moving up the scale, we're going to look at scanty grind slash V grind, okay? They're kind of the happy medium between hollow grind and convex, right? That's the next grind. The scanty grind is really easy to maintain in the field, along with the V grind. They are fine carvers, and you can baton wood with them and skin animals with them, but they're not as durable as, say, the convex grind. Now, the convex grind, really the biggest premise is the con, you could say, they're harder to maintain in the field. Me personally, I don't think so. It just really depends on the tools you bring with yourself. I bring myself I forgot the brand. I think it's like a Smith's diamond board. Has a coarse and a fine. I never use the coarse anyways because I don't want to get that dull. But in case I ever do, it's there. But I do have the fine. I have a honing, and I always have a leather belt. Or that's why I like leather sheaths. You can use this to help strap your blade as well. So you have all three processes right there itself. That way you can maintain the edge in the field. Now, that being said, like I said before, that's what you want. That's what your goal is. What can you maintain yourself with your setup, your tools in the field? So, guys, that's the knife portion of this. We're going to move on to saws next. All right, folks. So, folding saws. I don't have my folder out here. Like I said, it's in my backpack inside my house. But you guys know what a folding saw looks like. So, the reason why folders are very popular is because they're lightweight, they're compact, they're pretty durable for the most part, as long as you don't use and abuse them, and they're easy to maintain ish, kind of. Because if you maintain a folding saw, you can maintain really any saw. And I really encourage you guys to learn how to actually sharpen saw blades and maintain them and reset the curve. Learn how to do that now, opposed to, say, find yourself in a situation your saw is really shitty, it's not sharp, which takes a long time for a saw to get dull, but it does happen. And the curve could be off. You might nick a tooth, whatever. So you have to really tweak that right there. Learn how to do that stuff, guys, prior to going out in the field. That's why you should be practicing, and practicing some more, right? That's why we're doing this. Now, the thing with folders, they're usually inexpensive. So, that being said, let's talk about more, I guess, robust saws, if you will, for longer term use. And that is going to be your handsaw or your crosscut saw, is what I'm going to reference this as. Okay. You can buy these from the hardware store. Granted, they come with all sorts of funky teeth on there, or TPI, which is tooth per minute. inch. Excuse me, that's TPM. I'm an idiot. So, tooth per minute. Wow, this is my salt saw. No, this the TPI, excuse me, is tooth per inch. So how many teeth are there per inch on the saw? Now, granted, crosscut is, in my personal opinion, the best type of tooth or saw to go with. Why? Because it works with dry processed wood like board or dry branches you find in the ground in the forest, and it doesn't do too bad of a job with green wood as well. So, that being said, that's why I would recommend a crosscut saw or hand saw, whatever you guys call it. I don't personally like frame saws or buck saws or bow saws, whatever you guys want to call it. Kind of three names are synonymous. But the reason why I don't like them is because they limit your ability to cut certain circumference of logs. So say that you found this perfectly dry, dead maple log, but it's like 2 inches, 3 inches too thick for your, say, frame saw to go through. Granted, yeah, you can always roll it, but that's a lot of twisting and turning. You might hurt yourself. You might cause a log to fall. All this crazy stuff. Granted, if you try sawing it, you could, but work with me here. Thing is this, so that's why I don't like it. Plus, if you are ever in some kind of tight spot, instead of worrying about the frame being up so high or whatever, with this I can reach over in, say, a more secluded area or a tight area. I can get there and I can saw down the log to what I want it to be. Now, granted, that saws, guys, not really a whole lot with them. A safety factor I would pay attention to: don't leave this laying around in camp, because I don't want somebody ripping their hand open, because they leave some really nasty and gnarly cuts, and man, those are really bad. Get some kind of cover. Now, granted, there's PEX tubing you can throw on this, or PVC as a sheath, El Cheapo sheath that you can make plenty of, or you can go ahead and make a leather sheath for this with a little snap going through the handle. Up to you, your decision. Along with that, guys, if you're cutting with this, make sure you have some kind of weight on whatever object you're cutting, say a log per se, and you're taking your left hand here after this blade is in its kerf by, say, half inch or more. That way it's not going to jump out and possibly hit your hand. Okay? Sit there and you have your hand however comfortably close you want it to. I'd recommend wearing leather gloves too. And you can push down slightly on the end that's coming off. That way it doesn't pinch your saw blade. Thus, doesn't help break teeth and doesn't bow your saw and possibly break it, especially in cold weather. So, guys, that's saws. Now we're going to move on to axes. All right, guys, so with axes, what we want to pay attention to, first things first, is how much weight we're willing to carry and, quite frankly, our personal selves. We want to take our axe, and we want our axes to be at least from our armpit to cup hand in length. So this is a pretty good fit for me, which I really love this axe. I really, really do. I recommend this axe. It's a Snow Neely Hudson Bay camping axe. The only item I'm going to really point out, guys, but I really love that axe. Now, moving on, guys. Axes should be, I guess, I was going to say weighed, but that's not it. I guess measured that way, if that's a good extension for your body. Now, another thing we need to do when we pick axes, guys, we need to pay attention to what species of wood do we have around us majority-wise. For me, it's mostly coniferous, so it's softwood. So, okay, cool. It doesn't really matter what grind I get. And what do I mean by that? There's skeiny grind and there's convex grind, for the most part, for most bushcraft axes. Pros and cons, guys, same thing with the knife compared to the axes as well, because when you think about it, both are just basically knives in the end. So, that being said, always keep your axe knife sharp, because a sharp axe is way less dangerous to you, the wielder, opposed to a dull axe. Why? Because if I go to swing at a frozen tree and this is really dull, it's going to bounce off and it can go back and hit my friend, it can hit me, it can slip off and hit my leg, it can do all sorts of crazy stuff. I've seen it myself. Now, that being said, though, with a sharp axe, it's going to bite in. Now, granted, how much that bites in is depends, on the length of the handle, how heavy the head is, which goes back to, okay, what are we willing to carry into the forest with us? What do we need to carry with us into the forest? Me personally, I like what's called, well, at least what I call a hiker's axe. This is perfect for me. It's a 20-inch, yeah, 20, yeah, 20-inch handle here. Granted, I think during my review, I think it was like a 19 and 3/4 or something like that, which isn't a deal breaker for me, whatever. Inch handle, point being this. But the axe itself, guys, it's a very handy tool for multiple reasons. Now, granted, I can use it like a knife, obviously. I can sit there, I can carve sticks with it, I can make feather sticks with it, I can gut game with it, all this fun stuff. I can use a ferrocene rod with this. I can use the rock method to get some sparks off of this as well. But like I said before, in my axe video, or my Paul method video, guys, you can burn 1-inch increments into this, or if you use a metric system, that weird system you Europeans use over there, you can actually sit there and use this as a measuring tool. Not only for the Paul method, so you can use this for navigational purposes, but you can say, hey, I want to build a shelter of some type, and I need it to be, say, 6 foot long or whatever. Instead of sitting there guesstimating, dick around sticks and going, I think this is long enough for me, or you can just hold it up against your body, whatever it's going to be. Or if you're trying to cross a river and trying to make a log bridge or a raft or a log home. Anybody? Just me? Okay. But the thing is this, though, you can actually go up 5 foot on a tree, take this, and you can measure, count the increments, and they'll give you roughly how approximately high that tree is. So if I want to cross a river that's, say, I don't know, 20 foot tall, instead of going up to this tree going, I think that's 20 feet, I can actually measure this and go, that's 20 feet for sure. I can push this over onto the river. Granted, you probably want like 30 foot, that way you have some clearance on either side for purposes of weight. Now, that being said, guys, besides axes, let's talk about hatchets, right? So hatchets, tomahawks, they're pretty much the same category to me, just the fact that hatchets don't have a removable head like a tomahawk does, because really different, I guess, operating systems, if that makes sense. Your tomahawk is going to be just fitted on there. It goes from the bottom on up. Obviously, the top of the blade's facing up this way. That way, if I want to remove the head or the handle breaks, it's a lot easier for me to maintain doing that in the field. Plus, I can use it as a wedge. I can use a tomahawk to skin animals without having it being attached to the handle. Now, granted, I've never really had that disadvantage me during using my axe or my hatchet during a process like that, which I've done with a rabbit and a squirrel. But things this, though, some people like hatchets, some people like tomahawks. Personally, they're really comparable to each other. I think the biggest advantage over a tomahawk a hatchet has is you can use it like a hammer more so than the tomahawk. That's kind of really it, guys. There's not much difference between the two. Other than they do process the same circumference of rounds just fine. They weigh practically the same depending on the tomahawk. I mean, guess they'll weigh a little less, but either one can actually be worn on the belt. Most axes, though, are a little heavy to wear on the belt. I mean, granted, I wouldn't mind just putting this on my belt. I mean, I had a little sash I was wearing with my wool get up this winter, and it worked just fine with me with this. But again, personal taste, guys. So that's cutting tools, guys. Hopefully this made sense to you. And as always, see you in the next one. Stay frosty, prep up. Yeah, bless.